This is Paul 102 Digital Friday. Hot Talk starts now with the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. The topic today, peeling back the layers of domestic violence and its impact on men. On the set with me, two of the members of the Fathers Association. I have with me Shervon and Wendell.
Hey, good afternoon,
Or is it Marlon?
David.
Is it, I think it's Marlon.
Yeah,
It's
Marlon is
Marlon.
on.
Sorry
Yes.
about that. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, David. How you doing, brother?
I'm okay, bro.
Marlon, how you doing, brother?
I'm okay, man. Can't complain.
All right. We
Just
want
get
to
it
say
and I get over the flu.
okay. So we want to say good afternoon to Trinidad and Tobago, and even those listening abroad. We know it's wet out there today, so be careful on the roads if you're on the roadway right now, and get to your location safely. As always, we start off by saying thanks to Power 102 for giving us this platform, the Fathers Association, um, and men in Trinidad and Tobago, this important space where we can share and voice issues impacting men. Also, bring greetings on behalf of President of the Association, Rondell Fields, who is not with us today, and the other directors and members of the association. So, as David said, Marlon, and David, always thanks to you, right? Let me not neglect to say that you've been a very um, more than helpful host. Helpful will be an understatement, right? You've been a
Thank
very accommodating host, I think now we can officially designate you
you.
an honorary member of the Fathers Association. When you say to that, Marlon?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Don't give up, blood.
Yes.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Right. So today we are touching on the very, I would say at times, contentious topic of um, domestic violence, right? Because oftentimes when we hear domestic violence and the topic domestic violence, right here in Trinidad and abroad, Marlon, the way it is viewed, you often hear about men being abusers. You hear about men just violent, man beating woman up and down the place, and they just need to stop. That is how the conversation is brought across many a times, right? But there is rarely ever a conversation about men being victims as well, or some of the root causes of domestic violence. What's your thoughts on
Correct.
that, man?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned. I like how you mentioned earlier on the international audience because after last night speaking to a guy till about 12:30 this morning from Canada who
Mm-hmm.
going through some issues in Canada, but we'll get that after. But domestic violence, as we know, according to the law of Trinidad and Tobago, is have different elements. Right? I think well, we would know that. We talk most about intimate partner violence part is what I think there's really trying to stress on. But domestic
Right.
violence basically is more the relatives, brother against brother, sister against brother, these different things. But I think they try to stress more on the intimate partner violence where you see where men tend to do a lot of heinous things, delete themselves from society and these different things. And if you understand domestic violence, and I say we have the verbal, financial, all the different elements, verbal, financial, help me out here, mental, physical,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? But the only place emphasis on the physical, right? And I
Right.
always use the example of if you as a man coming home to a household and it's verbal abuse every day, obscene language, cursing is different thing. Could you go to the station and make a report about that? Would they take it serious? Would they come and caution the other person about that? Right? After the verbal, let me just say the emotional, the person stop talking to you in the household. Again, can you make a report about it? So let me just say the man in the household going through this. And then eventually, he decided to lash out physically. The whole police station coming down for the man. You understand what I'm saying? So we only
Yeah.
put emphasis on one element of the intimate partner violence or domestic violence in general.
And that's a very important point you're making there, Marlon. Many times when people hear domestic violence, like you rightfully said, they think about the physical violence, right? And in fact, I wonder how much we see the data, right? And we'll get into some of the data as we go into the conversation. But how much, if they extrapolate that data, if they break it down, how much of it is related to the different categories of which domestic violence fall? So Marlon made mention to the Domestic Violence Act as amended, and it says domestic violence includes physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, or financial abuse. Right?
Correct.
List it again for the folks listening: physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, or financial abuse. And then emotional and psychological is broken down into a number of categories. Too long for me to list out here on the program today. But as always, we will share the link with with this information so that you can read on your own time. But just to give you some of the areas under emotional and psychological abuse, it speaks to intimidation by use of abusive or threatening language. Example Marlon just gave there. Giving offensive material to that person or leaving it where it will be found or brought to the attention of the person. Following the person from place to place. Depriving the person use of his property or her property. Surveilling, watching, or besetting by any means of the person or of the place where the person resides, works, etc. Interfering with or damaging the property of a person. And let me tell you, and you just see that on Facebook plenty, right? You just see that, but
Correct.
how many, what does the data say? I've never seen the data broken down. But oftentimes you turn on social media and you'll see somebody car getting mashed up, right? And I'm saying somebody, but we all know most of the time who it is. The same way people generalize and say most of the time is man beating woman. Most of the time in terms of the other form, and most of the times when you see, I'm not talking scientific here, there's no data, I don't have the data in front of me at least. I've searched, I haven't found data breaking it down into the different categories. There is, when you look though, when you see property being mashed up in intimate relationship cases, as you pointed out there, Marlon, intimate partner cases, most of the time you see a man property getting mash up and smash up and car getting scratch and all kind of, right, extreme behavior of that nature. But there's also something here that I want to highlight for those who are going through it. And as I said, it's a long list and I can't go through all of it right now. It speaks to preventing a person from making or keeping contact with his family or friends. Even that is listed in the category of emotional and psychological abuse. Any other controlling, threatening, intimidated, or coercive behavior towards a person or his child or dependent. Right? Those are just some of the areas listed under emotional and psychological abuse. Marlon also spoke to financial abuse. And the law says financial abuse means a pattern of behavior of a kind, the purpose of which is to exercise coercive control or to exploit or limit a person's access to financial resources. Again, these are things we see people make joke about in Trinidad, right? The woman having the man backyard and he has no access to it, right? It happens the other way around as well, I'm certain. But we don't hear about it oftentimes when the shoe is on the other foot, right? Marlon, you there? David?
Seems like he's frozen.
Okay, all right. I thought I got cut off as well. All right. So, David, you rarely hear of it when the shoe is on the other foot, right? So this is some of what the law says in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, Marlon, I see you back. This is some of what the law says in Trinidad and Tobago about what financial abuse is, what emotional and psychological abuse is. Right, Marlon? You wanted to
Yes,
touch?
sir. I lost it for a bit, but we talk about the financial abuse.
Right. I was making the point, Marlon, that oftentimes you'll hear fellas joking with their partners that the wife had a
Yeah.
bank card, right? And they don't have any access to their funds. I have known
Yeah.
people like that, right? Where when they get paid, they tell you straight. I had partners I don't tell you straight. They say, boy, I had to ask my wife for some of my pay. Yes, I had to ask my wife for some of my money. And there are
No,
people who will say, huh? Wait a minute.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I said there are people who will say, yes, man, because you're just lying too much or whatever, and those things. But if the shoe was on the other foot, right, that would not be the response to a situation like that. Yeah. So again, I can't read out all the details of the legislation. You'll get bored. We'll put it up on the site and you could read some of it on your own time. Just one more thing. What does domestic relationship mean in the act? Domestic relationship means a spouse or former spouse, a cohabitant or former cohabitant. Cohabitant meaning somebody who was living with, right? A child, dependent, a relative, a person who has agreed to marry the respondent, whether or not the agreement was terminated. So, like fiance, right? You made you had an engagement before. A person in a visiting relationship, in a dating relationship, and a couple other things there, right? You'll have to read it on your own time as well. All right. But guys, just to give you some of what the law covers in Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon, Annette. Thank you for joining us. I see Annette says, yes, Annette, I agree with you 100%. Marlon, Annette is saying they are supposed to take every man seriously who report domestic violence at any station. We agree with you, Annette. The thing is, go ahead, Marlon.
And she's so correct, right? Because many times I have noticed that when a man do some things of that time and the whole society jumps on his case, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a man wouldn't wake up just so in the morning and just commit a crime. For nobody would commit a crime just so. Most of the time, you would walking on your and just say, you know what, today I gonna kill myself or kill this person on the case of it. Sometimes the person reach out for help, sometimes even provocation on the next side, right? And when they don't take the report seriously or take the person seriously, and the person realize have nowhere to turn, the only other way to see out of this misery is to do something ridiculous. And that is very serious, right? Because that financial abuse, I seen a man come to me crying. He said all he'll get is money to reach to work. He can't even buy nothing. They drink for himself on a Friday. He can't buy nothing. And it's a big joke, right? And even when you see, let me say in the reverse, we see a level of intimate partner violence that get captured on video. Some of the stations on them, the next morning is a big joke on the radio station. Everybody laughing, ha 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 ha. But when it's in the reverse, you want to shut down the country, right? Everybody must transfer. So clearly it's showing you that men are again, I always say, are the disposable sex in society. We just here to just come out and work, walk in ATM, bring money, and no kind of appreciation for men. And Ms. Anthony is correct, totally correct.
Well, Marlon, and I would say that there are people who abuse for the sake of power and control, right?
Yes,
On
on
the male side and on the female side, right? Thank you, Annette. See your comment again. We appreciate it very much. There are people who abuse for power and control, right? Men and women, right?
Correct, yeah. Yeah.
Abuse for power and control. So it's not in some cases has nothing to do with provocation, nothing to do with frustrated and all of those things. There are those who just that whatever wires got crossed in their upbringing, and I'm saying wires get crossed, right? Though are oversimplifying it, right? They may have been brought up seeing violence, right? They may have experienced things in life that has taken them down that road mentally,
But
right?
when I say provocation, Shervon, when I say
No, no, no.
right,
I'm not discounting what you're saying, but
yeah.
because I want to make it clear. One thing we don't do in the
Correct.
Fathers Association is make
But
excuses for anybody, yeah?
right.
We don't
But
do that.
I have seen men. Sorry, I
Yeah?
mean to cut you off.
While others do so, others in other associations like to make excuses and they like to speak one-sided. We don't do that, right? So that why I just
Correct.
put it across there so that nobody could say, oh, no, we don't do that here. I put it across to say that, yes, there are men and women who abuse for power and control. But unfortunately, what you see happening is what you see there, Marlon, is that everything is lumped under the same category. And that's why I say the point of men, where they say that man just running around beating up woman, everything is lumped under one category with no consideration for some of the other things you listed there, Marlon, which is also motivating factors, right? And because it's not identified and it's not addressed and it's the appearance of one plaster for every sore, we are yet to make any firm headway in addressing the issue of domestic violence, because we are treating with it in this country and around the world as a conversation surrounding agendas, not gender, G-E-N-D-A-R, agenda, A-G-N-D-A. People want to purport and promote an agenda, and to do so, they are making it just into a gendered conversation, and the way to do so is just to make man look like the crazy.
Correct.
Right? Which is not the case. And that's what we want to do today. As we say, we want to get down into some of the different layers, because there are different reasons that this happens, right? And two, men are victims too, which is hardly ever a conversation that you hear, as you pointed out there, Marlon.
Correct.
And I'm sure you, Marlon, would have many experiences of men like myself who come to us to report to us that they are victims of abuse and they don't know,
Of course.
they don't know what to do.
Of course, yeah. And so now I'll show you the example is like, all right, so we in a society where we tell or we try to purport to men or tell men, walk away. Because I always say that, walk away, right? But when you walk away, let me an example of the provocation. You walk away, and while you're walking away, you get a pot behind your head. You launch back the pot under, because I mean, it's human. They just say launch back the pot, she get head. I see she got a skin woman. The pot head, she head. The police coming for you. That's why I say the provocation thing. If you understand what I say that. So it will be well kind of confusing for men, because I have seen men actually stay in the next room, lock in the room, and women trying to bang on the room. And my point is that we just said, we have both parties to do this thing, but when a report is made in the station, one party is taken serious. That's the point I'm very trying to bring across.
No, and I agree with you, and that's why I say I'm not discounting that at all. I'm not discounting that at all. It happens for different reasons. There are people who are violent in nature. There are people who are abusive and want to control others, right? And then there are other reasons. And there are those who say, well, the reason don't matter. We tell them about the reason don't matter. But if you don't get to the root of issues, you can't deal with the issue. You have to get to the root of an issue. Right? So you can't just say, for those who have power and control issues, That is, you have to get to the root of what caused that as well, so that you
Correct.
can address that. And listen, people who have that of all need. I am making no excuse for domestic violence. You know? Everybody who participates in that act need to face the full brunt of the law, right?
Correct.
We are also saying if we don't get to the root of the issue, we can educate people differently, men and women, right? Because education is a part of it. If we don't get to the issue, we cannot put proper programs and systems in place to address it and curtail it because we haven't gotten
Correct.
to the root of the issue, right? Oh, a domestic violence shelter is a great idea, you know, for men and for women. But is a domestic violence shelter the thing that is going to curb the occurrences of domestic violence? No. We're talking about a cultural behavior. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about societal norms, right? And unless we deal with the root of the issue, then we just be spinning top in mud like we have been doing for many years.
Correct.
Now, Marlon, you made a very interesting point about right. You made a very interesting point about when you gave the example about getting hit with a pot and the person pelting back with the pot. That's a very interesting point because this is some data, right, that has been published in the National Library of Medicine, right? Again, this is not Marlon, Shervon, and the Fathers Association making up things or making up agendas like people do. This is data that has been published. And it says almost 24% of all relationship has had some violence. And half, 49.7% of those were reciprocally violent, which means the both parties were involved in violent behavior towards each other. Let me read that again for you, Trinidad and Tobago. I want you all listen carefully here. And again, we don't say things. Everything we say, we post up on our site after. It's there for you to read and see for yourself, digest for yourself. We ain't coming here with one-sided stats like people love to do. 24% of all relationships had some sort of form of violence. And half of those, 49.7 to put the specific figure, were reciprocally violent. Right? Both were bothing. Now hear this one. In non-reciprocal violent relationships, which means it wasn't both people violent, only one of them were violent. Women were the perpetrators in more than 70% of the cases. You ever hear this before on anybody platform, Marlon? Who talking about
Yeah.
violence?
I will tell you. Yeah.
Right?
That's not what I say, but that's what I tell you.
No,
Right?
that's right. Because we discussed it before. I mean, have you heard the people who speaking publicly about domestic violence? Have you heard
No,
them
they
before?
wouldn't call that. They wouldn't call
Right?
that's it.
No, I'd have more. Let me go on. Reciprocity, which means when the two people fighting, was associated with more frequent violence among women as well. Right? Regarding injury, and this makes perfect sense to me, it says men were more likely to inflict injury than were women. Because if a man and a woman get in a fight and the man fighting, right? Most times, not all the times, men are physically stronger. And therefore, if that is what it descends to, unfortunately, the woman will be the one who gets more serious injury.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? And again, I didn't make up this information. Marlon didn't make up. There are PhDs behind this research. Right? People with PhDs who have done this research and published this research. And we put it up there for you to read. And so we are saying again, when you look at this data that drills down into not just it have violence, and most of the violence reported as women are reporting against men, because that is what you see. That is what you see. You see that there are 20,000 cases, and of the 20,000 cases, 80% of the cases were women reporting against men. That is what you see. But how does that tell us about what actually happening? All of the different elements and variables. What does that tell us for us to be able to treat and address it? Because here we are seeing in this study that was conducted some years ago and published several times since then, that about half of the violence in relationships happens equally, both people fighting with each other. And when that is not the case, most of the violence begins where the woman is the perpetrator.
And on that topic, I want to give kudos to some of the officers who take these reports, right? Because that officer was getting my story, and he say the woman actually started back and she raised them on the station, right? And she make she report. The husband come after and give his side of the story. So the police officer in his judgment say, well, this look like a fight, and a fight is between two persons, right? So he said, well, if this is a fight, then both of only have to get charged. You know, the woman back down. All of a sudden, she boiled on like Baji. Because they come into the police station with the intention that they are female, and the law automatically going to take up their side, which happens in some of the cases, right? So, I just want to get kudos to that, to the officers who listen to the matter and try to be fair and partial in the situation, right? But this is what mostly goes on. And I can tell you personally that a lot of men, we feel, well, we will feel so, that the law doesn't back us as well. This is why we don't make reports on certain things or whatnot. But the females have no problem when they make a report in the station. And that is why sometimes we might get statistics saying more females making reports than is offending. Because you know, man, we kind of really macho.
I'm glad you said that part, because I was going to tell you my experience has been over the years that for some reason, and I have some things to data to go through on that as well at some point. But for some reason, Marlon, men do not want to follow through on their reports. That has been my experience. So in a number of cases that have come to me directly over the years, there are men who they make the report and then they withdraw the report, right? Or they make the application in the court and then they withdraw the application in many of the cases. And so there's also reports and data and journals about underreporting among men, right? And I'll pull that up in a second. So that's a very good point. And why are men not inclined to report? My experience in the court has been that in the court, when it comes to domestic violence, my experience, I am not diminishing anybody who had a different experience, please, right? I'm not diminishing that. I'm telling you my experience, and in my conversations with men who have been before the court, who have applied for domestic violence applications in the main, they believe they're treated fairly in terms of that application, right? They don't feel like they've never indicated to me in the court that they feel like they're not heard or being ridiculed where their domestic violence application is concerned, right? That has been in the main in terms of my experience. However, in the police stations has been a different issue or a different sentiment, not issue, right? What men have shared is that when they make reports of domestic violence in the police stations, that they are often, in my experience again, not treated with the same service that they see women being treated with, right? They are ridiculed at times, right? They're pushed off in a corner. We've seen videos. There's a particular police station, I think it was Valencia, where there was a video of the police officer ridiculing and chasing the man out of the station who came to make a domestic violence report.
Correct.
Right? There's a video of that. We have not heard since what has happened to that officer. And I hope at some point in time the commissioner or someone at that level could give an update, because those are the things that impact a man's willingness to want to come and report that he's a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah.
What has your experience been, Marlon?
No, similar. We have seen it. I myself is a person. I went to make report on certain issues, and the police element move like if anything important, not a matter of urgency. And when the other half went at the point in time to make a report, the report on your phone coming by the fine anyways. So I have myself an experience. You understand? Other men as well as the same day. I see a man. I think that was about a few months ago. The man was in the bar drinking. I happened to talk to the man at the gender-based violence unit. Then he gets some kind of sort of redress. Then they started taking him serious because we intervened. But there were no more decision. I think it was 5 level or something, right? So these are the issues here, and then they want to come back and say, "Here's a man that just walk away, just deal with it." But it don't work so. We are all human beings. The law is supposed to be for everyone. So why it is? Hold on a second, there's some noise in my background here.
All right, I'll go by the time, Marlon. Let's mute for a second. I'll go until the noise quiet down. That is a very important point there as well, Marlon. Because and let me just say senior superintendent Guy Allen has worked with us over the years, right? And one of the things I have observed, and you just alluded to it there, is that when we intervene and they realize we are in the picture, then there's a different sort of response, right? And I have worked with, I have worked with, engaged with Senior Superintendent Guy Allen over the years. And I know that her instructions to our officers is to deal with everybody equally. But I want to say that where that is not happening, there needs to be stern consequences. Now, Senior Superintendent Guy Allen has now moved on in her career in the police service. So I would like to congratulate her on her promotion, and as well thank her for the engagement, right, and the support over the years. And there's a new officer heading the gender-based violence unit at this time. I believe his name is Superintendent Ramsuk, right? I'll double check to confirm. And Superintendent, if at any time you get this, you if you are looking at this, and we will also reach out formally, we hope to form that same relationship with you, but not just a relationship where when somebody comes, they are not getting attended to a man, we have to call and say, Superintendent, you could see about David. David say he make a report and the police run him out of the station, and then you send somebody to take David's report. No, there needs to be not just training is one thing. I know the police service does a lot of training, but together with training, there must also be accountability, so that when officers are not in alignment with the standards set out by the service in treating with domestic violence for all genders, then they must be held accountable and serious consequences for that type of behavior. Because at the end of the day, the more we make men feel like they cannot report domestic violence, the more they feel unwelcome, the more they feel ashamed because of the issues they face with domestic violence, is the more violence we'll have in homes. Because Marlon made the point earlier, if somebody sits at home and they're being abused repetitively, eventually either they would be murdered or they would erupt and bring serious harm to somebody else. Right? So we call on the commissioner, we call on the new head of the gender-based violence unit to let continue to build that partnership to ensure that men have a space and a voice when they walk into police stations to make their reports for domestic violence. Marlon, your back, we're still having some issues on your end.
Yeah, I've felt all good. I said that no, just give me 1 second.
All right. So this is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, right? This is a US-based institution. And they list some of the reasons that men are least likely to report domestic abuse. It says many believe there are no resources or support available for male victims, which is important, right? Is there support and resources available for male victims of domestic violence here in Trinidad and Tobago? Well, let me start off by saying kudos to the Minister of Gender and Child Affairs, Ayanna Webster Roy, who when was this? This was back in March. There's a program launched called the STEP program. And what it does is offers grants up to $10,000 to start or expand a business or to attain scholarship or vocational academic training for domestic violence survivors. And I had listener, when we ready, we just pong and hit those in authority for their inaction. Right? So I want to give kudos where kudos is due. It starts off by saying that both male and female survivors of domestic violence have access to these grants. And I am pleased to see that statement, Honorable Minister, because over the years, when you hear about domestic violence, you hear it's to females. And that is something we have been saying aloud for a long time. And so we are pleased that this program that was recently launched caters for both male and female survivors of domestic violence, right? And so we encourage those listening, if you are a victim or if you know persons who are a victim and who can benefit from this grant to build themselves up, please direct them to the Ministry of Gender and Child Affairs, which I believe is in the office of the Prime Minister, right? And I suspect that one of the reasons of this grant, because tied to, and we spoke about it earlier, Marlon, is financial abuse, right? And if somebody is to separate and get back on their feet and go forward, this grant in terms of starting the business, going to school, right, whatever the case may be, is going to be very helpful. So kudos to the minister. But that point, Marlon, about why men don't report, they say because there are no resources. There are no resources for men. And what else do we have in Trinidad and Tobago that supports male victims of domestic violence?
At the moment, nothing. We don't have anything in place for that.
Right? So while we give the minister kudos for that move, we are saying there's a lot more to be done, because every conversation, or most of the conversation, is dominated by the view that women are victims. Now, again, when we say that somebody go and pull the stats, Marlon, and they will go and say that is mostly women who are victims, right?
Yeah.
And we are saying, we are not denying that. According, listener, let me call the stats, Trinidad and Tobago. And this stats this is from the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs, right? And it says that, what does it say? Right. This is from a TTPS report. It lists there were 11,441 reports of domestic violence incidents between 2010 and 2015. And approximately 75% of these reports were females, right? During that same period, well, I'll deal with that after, right? 75% of the reports were female. And we are saying, if you look at the stats from that angle alone, it will paint the picture that you want to see.
And so I wanna guess that 75% of report would be physical abuse, right?
Well, it doesn't give detail. Yeah.
Because if we under the umbrella of the Domestic Violence Act, which clearly stated in the Act of Trinidad and Tobago the different elements of domestic violence, then how we can measure how much of the men went through verbal abuse, right? How much of them went through emotional abuse. And again, come back to what we say when we now started speaking. They're only measuring domestic violence on the physical abuse. Now, if we could curb the domestic violence on the verbal part and the emotional part, I don't think it would not lead to the physical part.
Excellent point,
So the reason until it reach to the last phase where it can't no coming back, and we barely start on that. But I can tell you, no, I know men going through verbal abuse every day. I know men going through emotional abuse. I think we had a case how much years ago where the woman was withholding sex from the man and he had to pay $200 in count or something, and then we had, I think my nephew tell you about that case years ago, 4 years back. So these are not being researched statistically. We just go with physical part most, I believe. You understand?
No, that's an excellent point. That's a superb point. If we deal with the other issues, it can curb the amount of physical violence that we see, and it's a good point. Yeah. And as you make that point, let me call on another report from Spain. All right? And this is a study that was conducted in Spain. And what that study says is that there was a marked decrease in intimate partner violence where equal parenting time was allowed, was the order of the court. There was less conflict and a marked decrease in intimate partner violence when shared parenting, right, was applied as the order of the court. So you see what you're saying there? Violence here, right? And they attack the issue here, and the violence starts to come down. Right? That's logic. That's logic, Marlon. Yeah. So again, it is more than just standing on pulpits and screaming. Because you know what the association's approach could have been today? We could have come here with reports just saying, oh, nobody taking on man, nobody taking on man, nobody taking on man, nobody take. No. Because if we just stand and scream on the right side of the room and you stand and scream on the left side of the room, we ain't gonna get nowhere now.
Nobody here, nobody.
Yeah. We wouldn't get anywhere. And what we have always been about over the years is solutions. Right? It's solutions. And we can see, if you look back over the years, you would see that every year, this issue of domestic violence, you always hear it reporting that it's increasing.
Yeah.
The number is increasing. But do you have billions of dollars being spent towards it, invested towards dealing with it? So, but it's clear that the approach is not yielding the results that we would expect. And why is that? It's because we are not targeting the root of the issue. We're not looking deeper down into the stats like you're saying, Marlon. We're not extrapolating data and breaking down the stats and say, let me see what is financial. Let me see what is the different things in emotional and psychological that are happening. Let me see the verbal abuse that is happening. Let me see this that is happening. Because you're right. Let all of those things come and they contribute.
And then we can have something like a pie chart to show how much is it physical, how much is it verbal, and like, get a better understanding. And even so, and I wanted to join this here. A lot of men, I'm talking to the men here now, you need to understand the different elements of this domestic, intimate partner violence and domestic violence. Sometimes men didn't even know the game verbally abused. They didn't even know the game emotionally abused. They're thinking, you know, like a woman is up. And he know you that they have to live with your mental, now come out of mental, men's mental, mental, all these different things. So a lot of men don't even know that they're in a abusive relationship, right? They don't know that the person attacking the mental. But when they retaliate, then all they know that they know what, must hit the woman or physical abuse. But it doesn't reach that just so. You go start with some obscene language. You go start with the person staying silent. You go start with the person hiding the keys for your car. You might start with the person slashing your tires. All these form of abuse you be getting as men before it reach to you, reciprocating now in a stronger manner or violent manner, and then now you come under the perpetrator. So it comes down to a lot of knowledge and educating yourself as well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I am sure, and that's a good point you make there, that some of the things that we mentioned that falls under the definition of domestic violence and emotional abuse and psychological. I'm sure most people don't know that. As you point out there, they don't connect it as domestic violence, right? Again, because they say people just say the physical. I admitted on this program some months ago that I myself was in that situation, right? And
we both have
yeah, but I never saw myself, not one day I saw myself as a victim of domestic violence. I didn't look at myself that way. I didn't call it that, right? But now having more knowledge, right?
correct.
I now understand what it is. And
And the thing is, not continue, sorry, because I want to
no,
forget about
go ahead.
that the same advice that the other society give women to get out of, seek help. It is the same advice we given men here today. Understand what is the different level of abuse and seek help the same way before it escalates into something violent. Right? Seek counseling, seek mediation, seek something, speak to somebody, because if it leave unattended and undone, that will be getting major problem.
Yeah,
You understand?
yeah,
So we send the same message to men. If you know you're in an abusive relationship, we here understand the cycle of abuse, everything, because at some moment the cheating you bad whole month. As Friday reach,
Marlon, David.
Yeah, he's frozen again.
Oh, is Marlon got frozen? Okay.
But I
So
understand the drift where he's going.
yes, David, I here for the whole program. Go ahead.
I'm absorbing. Continue, Marlon.
oh yeah, right? Yeah. So this is what the cycle of abuse means is a pattern. That's something that is going on. So it means that we say, as I now mentioned, she nice whole week. When Friday comes, she vex whole week. When Friday comes, she nice. Or somebody, these different things. I'm a pattern, I mean, all the pattern, but that is why you call it cycle, because it go wrong and it continue going wrong and then eventually escalate. And the same way how one woman they get out of it, we tell men to get out of it and work on it or get out of it and do different. So
Yeah.
that is the advice we give men.
No, you're correct. And we have to remember, and I say we men have to remember that unfortunately, when the call is made the other way, as Marlon pointed out earlier, unfortunately at this time, we are the ones that are seen as the abusers. So when you stay in a situation with somebody demonstrating that type of behavior, as with the saying, Trinidad, you're putting yourself in place, right?
Correct.
Because you don't want to get out, you don't want to seek help, right? Because just as getting out may be difficult for a woman, in some cases, getting out is also difficult for a man. It's not.
Correct.
It's not no less.
Not easy.
You're studying all you have invested. You're studying your children. Um you're studying your life. There's a report, Marlon, day before yesterday or somewhere there in the Trinidad Express. Where is it? I have it here, July 10th, right? Where a man was bludgeoned to death. The
Correct.
article says now they haven't held the perpetrator, but they didn't list who the alleged perpetrator is, but his mother and his son was giving feedback on the amount of abuse he suffered in his relationship,
Yeah.
right? And that they begged him and they pleaded with him to get out, and he didn't, unfortunately, and he was killed, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, gentlemen, you had to and you had to you can't just sit in there because it's two outcomes you could have. You could end up dead, or the report could be flipped on you, right? Or they could
Correct.
okay as Marlon said till you react, and now it flip on you, right? Nobody wants to hear after that what you suffered,
Correct.
right? There's another case, Marlon, I think in the Sangre Grande area, similar situation where the man was killed. The woman said it was abuse. It was
Yeah.
self-defense. You remember that? And then all the neighbors came out and said, no, that woman beating that man, abusing that man for years. Right? And thankfully she was eventually charged. So you have to realize that the disadvantage is on us now. Right? It's against us. When somebody says we are the perpetrators, they believe that, yeah. You see that fella there? He looking like a perpetrator. What that beard? What he ras?
Yeah.
He looking like a perpetrator. Right? You see Marlon? He a perpetrator. Maximan, that means perpetrator. Right? That's how people would look at us. So I see
Yeah, you can't.
Justanis Guy. I think I hope you pronounce your name correctly. She says our culture taught us that it's not manly to report domestic abuse. True. That is one of the points in the article that I was reading from earlier. Right? It speaks to it says two very interesting things. It says that the study has found that men who are larger in size, physical size, are less likely to report domestic violence because they'll ridicule them more. Right? People will say, well, big man like you ever heard that before, Marlon? A big man like you? That woman beating up a big man like you?
Yeah.
Right? That's a very good point, Justin.
And on the flip side of it, I've also heard and seen smaller women watching the bigger men and attacking them, right? And they're telling them, but who will believe I attack you? So they know they know the law inside out, and they would do whatever they need to do, and because they know that the law kind of biased to a point, right? So I have seen bigger men just restrain a woman with one hand, she hands swell up, that's it. He ain't chain. He does that whole she from coming in with whatever, she must have a knife in she hand, he must be ring she hand, take away the knife for application. The police come for him. You understand?
One of the points there was made, they said the abuse of men is often treated as less serious or a joke.
Correct.
Right? And if you want to test what Justin is saying, I'm sorry for butchering your name, I'm very sorry. But if you want to test, go on to the social media sites of one of the newspapers, right? And read the comments of when a man is a victim of violence or a victim of rape, right? A victim of abuse. Go and read the comments there, and go and read the comments on a similar article where a woman is the victim. And there you would see the cultural differences that this commenter is referring to As the cultural
Right.
differences, because it's not
Yeah.
when we talking about police and government and court, it's not them alone. It's us.
Mm-hmm.
It's us. Because it's not them who commenting on those social media platforms, right? It's the average man, it's the layman,
Yeah.
the man on the ground, who is ridiculing a man who is abused, right? Ridiculing a man, and when I say abuse, I'm talking about all here, right? Domestic, sexual, all of those things, right? Who is ridiculing him. So when another man who is a victim see that, what making he had the backbone, the belly, as we say, to go and make any report? When he realized, just as this article says, that the abuse of men is often treated as less serious or a joke.
There's
Right. And
let me just add 2 cents to
Mm-hmm.
the conversation here. Now, being a media personality and um, I've been into the DJ thing, and the popularity front line, a different kind of abuse emanates from that. You know, there are some women who end up with these guys, or vice versa, and well, let's take it where the guys are the popular person. You're very popular. You have a fan base, and that fan base, as men, will have a lot of women who are fans, your personal fans. And I've seen instances where the woman who that they are with just can't handle that. You know, home, worse yet, when they're out there performing. I've seen instances already where these women will openly embarrass these men, because when you're a real popular guy, okay, the Marshall Montana, all the popular guys who women go crazy about when they come on stage and they're performing. You hear them squealing, they want to go up on the stage, they want to touch them, they want to hug them. There are women who are very, very, very much affected by that. It's a high end form of jealousy, because what I have noticed and seen for myself, and this is not something I'm making up or anything that I've read or seen on television. This is something I saw right in front of my eyes, where they come together. Yeah, Starboy hit the stage, they in the crowd. They might be seated up front, wherever, they backstage, whatever. If that guy don't demonstrate a kind of a behavioral pattern towards these female fans who will be all over him, big problems in a partner. Big problems. He now cannot perform. He's cagey about his performance, because the woman will get so upset that right there on the scene, in front of the crowd, backstage, wherever,
mm-hmm.
an explosive behavior will start. I say it's a real high end form of jealousy, because you are with this person who is that popular. Their fan base is made up of sometimes 80% women. And you are with that person, you enjoy all the returns. Let's say the person that's superstar that is earning big revenue and thing, you're living nice, he's treating you nice, and all of that. But I've seen that kind of explosive behavior from women. You with she, we're hugging she up so far. Why this? Why? And that explodes. Now the artist or the popular person now have to use all of what it takes to manage his responses there. Because at that point in time, you dare not lose it to say, well, she come up and she slap you, or she rip down your clothes, or she embarrass you verbally and all that. You now have to safeguard your popularity, partner, and take whatever happens out there. And like Marlon said, sometimes it ends up where people looking at you as a small man, a big man like he boy taking that boy. Now, if you don't do that now, you're gonna spoil your reputation, because the authorities ain't want to hear about you popular, and she lost it to the crowd there. they're coming at you. Heavy, heavy, heavy problems you're gonna have to face up to now. So that's our next kind of emotional abuse that I will call them star boys to go through. Some of these guys really love the woman and because they're taking them anywhere they're performing. Now, if the guy is up to any kind of craziness, I mean, what they call it, infidelity and stuff, I doubt he will take her to everyone where he expects the person who is in the infidelity is being carried on with is there. I doubt men will do that. There are some guys who put themselves in that kind of situation too. But what I'm saying, I've seen that happen already. And I think it's one of the greatest of men showing off that kind of control for that kind of emotional and public abuse. So I don't see that being mentioned. I listen to you detailing the legislation. There's nothing like that there for that partner.
But David, hear this, right? Because I was doing some reading to get ready for today. And you're saying that, and my mind started to scramble something I read, right? Hear this to what you're saying, right? This is another study, yeah? It says Machado, this is the name of the author of that study, found a consistent pattern of violence, including progression of abuse beginning with factors such as jealousy.
I know. I've witnessed it myself.
You see? You see, right? You witness. This is a big international study, and you saying you see it firsthand manifested.
I'm telling you, and not on one occasion, because I am blessed. The God blessed me with a voice that a lot of people like. I do. It's not a bravado with me or that. It's not no ego thing with me or that. Anytime people compliment me about it, I tell them straight up that is a God's blessing. So I don't think no, that don't go to my head at all. But I have been as MC, I have been as a announcer, whatever, and sometimes part of the program too, Because I told you at one time I was big in the DJ thing, I mean, I was very popular. I played all over the place, all over the country, all over Tobago. And I have seen that firsthand on many occasions where you just have to back down. These guys, they try their best to tell her, well, no, this is not so. If it was so, why would I bring you here? But listen, that old talk is going away. Sometimes people who have to come and take control of the situation, And that is to me, that is the greatest attack on any superstar. And that is the money generating profession this fella has, I'm speaking particularly about the man, because
his image is everything.
Yeah, most of the time they're living good, He'll play. Let's say go down and do a show and they get $10,000 for your performance and thing. Yeah, she might enjoy most of that because you want her to look good because she rolling with you at night. When you come out there, you know what she looking half, the way you looking, even though you're going on stage, you want her to look good because this is madame, this is my escort, and brother man, I've seen some explosive situations where I saying, my God, most of the time these guys have to take it down. I don't know. You can see sometimes the vexation. You see, like they want to explode like an atomic bomb, but they know if they do that, and anybody who have done that, their whole stardom goes into jeopardy. Nobody in hand them again because they're quick to say, it's here with the woman. They're not a man. He's not a big star. They're not looking at it from the embarrassment this person has caused on it. I have seen that on several occasions.
And David, and we see it internationally too, right? You see movie stars and singers losing contracts and losing endorsements and losing movies and all those things, right? Movie deals and all of those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anytime they retaliate, problems.
Yeah. Let me just remind Tobago. Just 1 second there, Marlon. I ain't call out the numbers for the day. My apologies for those listening and would like to engage. So the call-in numbers are 222-8255. The toll-free number for those international is 866-525-1099. And the WhatsApp number, if you want to engage via WhatsApp, it's 868-318-1021. All All right, my apologies. Go
Well,
ahead,
most of the people who are listening, I realize they rather to send comments
Yes,
via YouTube or Facebook.
yeah.
So, but you can still call in, right? Marlon said the number 222-8255. You can call in.
Go ahead, there, Marlon.
Yeah. So my thing, if this young lady is behaving so, or this young man is behaving so in public, you can imagine you're going on behind closed doors, right?
Hmm.
So I was reading this book called The Unplugged Alpha, where the guy would have listed for men 20 red flags to look for in women. And one of the red flags was overly jealous woman. They were the red flags, right? So again, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes men we choose women, and as I said, we don't know we're being abused. But now that I know what to look for, a woman that is very excessively jealous and embarrassing me, I think I will she. So I say, yes, so she'll
Yeah,
continue to do it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And as again, we had to look at the repercussions down the road. If somebody, as David is pointing out, there is showing that behavior, and Marlon, you doing that publicly, right? You comfortably enough to behave like that publicly, then there's no question about what is happening privately,
Correct.
right? We have to be, the Prime Minister made a statement a couple years ago, and everybody well, not everybody, some people get in an uproar when he said, choose your man wisely. But the same applies to men. Choose your
Correct.
women wisely. And there's this whole thing about victim blaming and victim shaming. People try to apply to the Prime Minister's statements. But you see, I don't know. We've shifted from the word accountability for our actions and our decisions, right? So everybody else must be responsible, but we shouldn't be. Yes, we agree. People should not use no forms of domestic violence in a relationship. But simultaneously, we also have to be conscious, as Marlon and David pointed out, at the behaviors of the people we align ourselves with. And if we see those flags early on, we need to run,
Correct.
right? And
Correct.
because it could end up in a lifetime of pressure for you after.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And then and it's open my culture too.
mhm.
The the other day had this thing where they tell boys don't hit the girls. We just start telling girls don't hit the boys, right?
Yes.
Because
Of
that
course.
I have seen young ladies in the school system tackling the boys, hitting them, all kind of thing. But when the boys retaliate, they get suspended. The boy gets suspended, the girls
Hmm.
start the fight.
Hmm.
And then they say, well, we should, he's a boy, we hitting the girl for. So this girl slapping me up, all kind of thing. What is it you want to do?
Hmm.
Not retaliate, but he gets suspended. So he have a record on his school transcript for fighting with that girl. And the girl go on scotch free. So you need to teach the young girls, the young ladies and the young girls not to hit the boys neither. I see me tell the boys don't hit girls, tell the girls don't hit the boys.
Yeah, yep. The same way, the same education across the board. The same
Correct.
education across the board. You're correct. Yeah. Now we were talking about underreporting, right? And we were talking about what the stats say about reports versus what is not reported. And again, this is things we need to drill down in Trinidad, so we could see where the problem really lies. Because this is a UK study. It says in 2017-2018, 49% of men did not report that they were victims of domestic violence. 49%. By comparison to 19% of women. Right? So there's a huge issue of underreporting.
Correct.
And that, as Marlon pointed out earlier, is leading to eventual violence on one hand or the other.
Correct.
And there are international studies we spoke to earlier that speak to why there's underreporting. But we need to also look internally here in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to start a study right here. What are the issues of underreporting here? Some of them we know from first-hand experiences, as we spoke to, the cultural issue as our commenter shared, right?
Yeah.
We talk about the experience with police in some instances that you and I are very familiar with, Marlon, right?
Correct.
We talk about what you hear on the national platforms and media being said when you hear the conversation by those in authority about domestic violence. Oftentimes, it does not include male as a victim, right? You see international organizations coming into the country and saying we're sponsoring these programs to stop domestic violence, and it specifically says against women and girls. Even boys get kicked out,
What?
right?
Next,
I think
I personally spoke to someone who told me they have an organization too for females, and they would have called me and thing, and they told me that, as I said, 100,000 was given to them to assist females in domestic violence. When she asked about the males, no response. After that, she said we didn't have a response.
who you said to her that? Because you broke up at the beginning there.
No, I spoke to someone who was there's an organization dealing with females,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So they would have received funding to deal with domestic violence with females.
Mm-hmm.
So she would have asked the question, well, what about the males? She didn't get no response. After now, she said we didn't get a response.
Let me interject, gentlemen. I have a caller on the line here. Good afternoon, caller. Hello? Caller, are you hearing me?
Caller, mute your
Yes,
device.
yes.
Right.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Here.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, good day to you all.
Good day, ma'am.
Every time I hear this topic of domestic violence, it really trips me off. I'll tell you why. I work on the National Domestic Violence Hotline for many years, plus in the drop-in centers. And a lot of women don't want to report cases because sometimes the very police station they go to make the report, the spouse or the partner, whoever, has some friend inside there, right? And they're not addressing their problem. Secondly, yes, men are also victims of domestic violence. And they're not going to report because police laughing at them. And all the time is the same old story coming up. When I was on the domestic violence hotline, there was a Canadian lady. She was the Minister of Domestic Violence Issues in Canada. And they had what you call transitory homes where the family, the wife or the children, they would be able to go. We don't have that kind of, the system here is very poor. It's very poor. And men who beaten women, they're supposed to go into a program. The law should outline that they need to get it kind of a program. So this domestic violence issues coming up all the time, that it's not stopping. There are women who believe if a man does not beat her, he does not love her. All these kind of psychological issues in their own head too, right? So we have to get real serious with perpetrators, whether it be man or woman. Get serious. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
ma'am. Thank
Cyril.
you very much for calling.
Yes.
We appreciate your call. We appreciate your call very much, ma'am. And some of the points you made are things that we touched on earlier. And that first point you made about persons not wanting to make a report or fearful of making a report because of associations in the police station is a very real issue.
Yeah.
That affects both persons and things that both Marlon and I have seen. Again, it's calls that we've gotten for various family issues, including domestic violence. where it said that his friend is a policeman, or he is a policeman, or she man is a policeman, right? She knew man is a policeman, and she friend is a policeman. And listen, I respect the police a lot, right? I respect them. I have a lot of relatives who are police officers, and who were police officers, and those who are police officers, and I have a lot of respect for them. But there are some cultural issues that need to change there as well, right? We know they are running skits and jokes on the social media. These guys who are doing these solo skits, right? And oftentimes when you see them portray a police officer is an officer who tracking a woman and trying to get a woman number and all these kind of things, right? And those things lead to the conflicts that we see. And experience what the lady the lady shared there of and she gave the example of, she said, women being afraid to report because the man has connections in the police station. I've seen that, right? And I've seen it from men, and I've seen it from the perspective of women. And so we again, Commissioner, as well as the new head of the gender-based violence unit, let me get your name, sir. I think it's Superintendent Ram Suk. Yes, Superintendent Ram Suk. There needs to be, we said, training. We need to review. I think you need to review what is the training being offered to officers. To me, you need to engage associations like the Fathers Association, like the Single Mothers Associations and others, right? To understand what is our experience coming to police stations to treat with the issue of domestic violence. The same with the courts as well, right? As I said, my experience, yes, in the main from my experience interacting with persons, the court has made significant strides where that is, but there's always room for improvement and a long way to go where we're dealing specifically with the issue of domestic violence, right? But definitely we need to review the training that is being offered, and that has to start with engaging your stakeholders to hear their experience. But as well, there needs to be accountability. The lady said it as well. There needs to be accountability. People need to be held accountable when they are not in alignment with the standards. Marlon, you're going to say something?
Yeah, just to reiterate to the caller there. The Fathers Association, myself and the Fathers Association, by extension, we support the TTPS full 100, and the law is the law across the board. We ain't supporting nobody having no friend and thing. If there's a crime and we deal with it, whether it's male or female, because we stand firm with that. And when we understand what she's speaking about, I wanted to make mention of that. Right? So I don't want to feel that, yes, I know she said a female might go and the male might have somebody in the station. The police and TTPS or the JTB, Gender-Based Violence Unit, need to follow the proper procedure, what they was taught, what they was trained to do, and everything will go supposed to go, and everybody will get the justice or whatever they take it.
I have another caller, gentlemen. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, brother.
Panel.
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, brother. Thanks for calling.
Yes,
Go ahead and make a contribution.
I was hearing you just now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You was referring to the training for the officers, right? I've been saying this for years, and I have a lot of friends who is police also. And sometimes I engage them in certain things they does and how they operate, right? And I am saying, I end up in a situation, I end up in a station, and the person who's dealing with me, I know for a fact, them have issues worse than where I come there for, right? So there's a woman beater, they don't mind the child, they're in court, but yet this is the officer who is dealing with me, right? So if them can handle their own stories, and then when I talk to them, and next song about, you come here for, boy, that's, like, dispatch you then, you're not dealing with me, but the person who dealing with me, you is telling them just dispatch me. So in other words, like, so what is this as I come and make a report for? So I had an incident where I have to tell them, I told him, man, I say, sir, I would like to talk to the sergeant at the station, because if I deal with you, the person I come in didn't want to deal with me, and then you come in now, you want to ask you what I say. What is the sense? You know? And most of the stations I go to, and people can attest to this, they of themselves have been problems in that same field. There's violent people in their own home. So how they starting to tell me or to deal with my situation? This is something I have seen, and it continues to happen. And also, the seniors in these positions, right? I know it's not something easier. They have to want to do it, because they know sometimes that their colleagues are doing certain things. But because to save face, we don't want the uniform or that to look bad. So we tend to play it down. And then later on, it becomes a plague. And then you might see it blow up in your face, you know. But that is if before that, we end up with a murder or something, you know. So it's something very much we have to look at. I think the commissioner of the person, whoever it could be, need to look at that training we're talking about it, and they must probably have a little more regular training, because you have also departments, special departments, right? However, the people in the special department is not the person who has been fronted you the customer service. So it comes like you're defeating the purpose, because the specialty person in some office or wherever, but when the report come in, that's not the person dealing with you. So somewhere in the as they go along, it's a continuous professional development. If it's once a week, you know what I mean? That's my recommendation on that.
Yes, no, that is an important point, Kola. Very important point. Very important point. Thanks for calling. A very, very important contribution.
Yes.
And
Well,
yeah,
based on that quality, I think that problem would stem probably from the inception of the police officers training, where they mostly train to deal with probably only mostly criminals, and mostly wasn't taught to deal with because that would be kind of family issue. Domestic issue is kind of like more intimate partner family issue, right? But since the installation of the gender-based violence unit, I've dealt with them. I've dealt with them once or twice, and I see that they try to be a little more professional. But I guess more training wouldn't hurt. So I understand where the caller is coming from.
but what the caller is saying, Marlon, is that when you go into a police station, the person you are interacting with is not the representative of the gender-based violence unit at all times, right? So, and that is the point I was highlighting, or he was highlighting, the caller was highlighting, that yes, we've said we introduced the gender-based violence unit, but what about the gender-based violence culture among all officers in the TTPS, right? Because the gender-based violence unit is not on the front line in every station. And it can't be, as we would expect, because resources, right? So the unit has a specialist role, but at the same time, all officers on the front line need to be trained as well. It's the same for the courts, right? We want judges, masters, and magistrates trained, right? And we see the judiciary reports that they do training, right? But also the staff we engage with, you need to be trained as well, which we see that they report they are trained as well, right? But that's the point, because when you walk in a courthouse, the first person you're dealing with is not the judge, master, or magistrate.
Well, the same applies to, let's say, now in most instances, I can probably put my head on a block. I could be chastised for putting such a statement out there, because in most instances, these incidents happen probably nighttime and thing, right? So you go into a police station, you're gonna meet a sentry, partner. You're not gonna meet nobody specialized to deal with domestic violence or anything like that. And it's difficult to understand or to accept that we have a gender-based violence unit that has a kind of time span for operation.
Yeah.
This should be something that they must sacrifice some sort of a more emphatic time frame. I don't want to say 24 because that could be very strenuous on the system. But if the problem is maxing like that, I mean, if it takes a 24-hour sort of a problem solving kind of method, it should be implemented. If there's to be somebody on call or something like that, because most of the time, these people who are sentries, them in business in the partner. I'm another caller. Good afternoon again.
Yes, this is Cyril here again.
Cyril.
Yes,
Cyril.
the man used the word judiciary. It triggered something. So I went in my library and I pull out my book here. Trinidad and Tobago Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Domestic and Gender-Based Violence Judicial Training and Resource Manual. This is a training that was done in the 90s with judges and magistrates and lawyers and all of these people from within that system. And we still today having this talk on domestic violence and gender-based violence, and like it's not going no place. You can have another one here, the judicial sensitization on the issues of domestic violence, gender-based violence, 2nd October, the 9th of October, 2000, right. So you see, these narratives out here.
Cyril, let me just say, not to cut here, there has even been more updated training that they have published. Right? So they're doing ongoing training, so you're making a good point. The point you're making, which we touch on as well, all of these resources or all of this money and training being done, and yet still we're not seeing any headway. That's where you're going, right?
Yes. I have a book on the domestic violence health issues. It's an 18th century law in England. If the perpetrator commits an act of violence, if it's a man, well, you know, most of the time the physical violence is mostly with men. They have a choice or two choices. One, they go into a program, a parenting program, or they make a jail. Right? What do we have here that we have as that you can say is compulsory, that is implemented to ensure these things? I also want to say that domestic violence and this type of issues should also be in schools, educate these young people. I see young boys and young girls fighting and beating one another on the streets. They have to understand early o'clock that will not be tolerated. We have to start with that violence from in the kindergarten. So children, especially young ladies, could understand that they have to value themselves. No, it's not just the law alone involved in this thing, it's the home too.
Yes.
The home fighting taking place in the home, mother beating father, father beating mother, children, sister beating brother. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so what we're saying, Cyril, we agree with you. What we're saying and what we've started off this program with is that we need to unpack and look at all of the different forms of domestic violence that is happening. Because oftentimes the attention, and why it is happening, because oftentimes the attention is just placed on the violence, which Marlon made an excellent point earlier. The violence is normally the end, right? After all the years of verbal abuse, physical abuse, mental, not physical, verbal abuse, sexual, emotional, mental, financial, and then it spills out into violence at the end. So that we can't, what we've been seeing, and that is our take, the reason why we've seen little traction, where the improvement, despite all the money being spent, is seen, is because it's just being dealt with as an agenda and not being dealt with from the roots of the issues that are creating it, right? I don't know if you were on if you listened from the beginning, and we were looking at some of the international research that spoke to why this is happening, why domestic violence happens in some cases. We also spoke about there's Spain, where Spain is recording less intimate partner violence because in their court matters or in their family court matters, they are using shared parenting more. And they're saying where they're using shared parenting, they're seeing less conflict and less intimate partner violence. So there are several reasons why these things are happening. And we can't just keep treating it as a one size fits all approach. We must get down into, as you pointed out, the societal and the cultural issues, the educational issues that is spawning what we are seeing now. But to do that, we have to be willing to have open conversations, right? And what you see happening is that has not been happening over the years. It's just been one-sided conversations. As I say, we've pitied men like animals out there, and all men doing is waking up and beating women every day and like cavemen. But we're not having honest conversations about what is causing this.
Right. So you use the word culture. I did a session on domestic violence some years ago, right? Here what a gentleman said. He said, why some women or why women who are victims of domestic violence is the karma. That is what this man is saying. That is the karma. So if they get in licks, you can't do nothing. It's something they did in their past life. So I said, sir, so if somebody beating your daughter, or your daughter beating your son, or your some woman beating your son, you are going to just sit by and say that is the karma? Well, I never hear such nonsense yet. So the belief, how are you going to change the mindset of someone who thinking like that? You are getting licks because of karma, or however they pronounce it.
Yes, I hear you, and there are so many different cultural issues, but as you rightfully said, can only be addressed through education. Thanks again for calling, Cyril. But I want to go back to your point.
There are some messages I think you should look at, Shervon.
Mr. Pandey says, Mr. Pandey 1000.
Make sure you say 1000.
Yes, Mr. Pandey 1000. Says, I think biologically people tend to feel empathy for women naturally and ignore men because we think men are tougher species. I myself have been falsely accused of abusing my children's mom. She made it her duty to reach everyone who would listen and tell them I abused her. I noticed through my ordeal that people buy women's stories wholesale and never once ask the man his side. Well, Mr. Pandey, I can relate to that. Marlon is shaking his head. I know Marlon and I talk all the time. We can relate to that, and we've heard those stories a million times. But let me tell you something, Mr. Pandey, 1000, and all listeners. A lot of the times, we speak, and I say we men speak after we've been accused. And that is where we put ourselves in a situation, right? So when, and Marlon could attest to this, when a report is made against us and somebody takes us to court saying we abuse them, that is when we prepare to speak and say, well, no, is I being abused, right? And that is where Marlon and I were saying earlier, we really need to change the culture about how we perceive domestic violence and what we do when we are victims of domestic violence, right? Because we need to identify with it and then understand what is next. We can't be afraid to report it, and that's what the association is here for. We're saying if people you go to our station, we made the point earlier, and you are getting ridiculed and you're not being taken seriously, reach out to us and let us know, right? We will step in these situations. If you go to the court and you are not, your report isn't being taken seriously, or you're being ridiculed, or you're not being you're being treated less than in reporting domestic violence, let us know, right? We will advocate. But we have to get out there though, right? And we have to take the necessary steps and access what is out there, because when we sit back and we feel we too man for all of the different reasons, cultural reasons, to say anything or to speak up, then the script is always flipped, and we look like the bad guys all the time. Marlon?
And that's the next thing too, right? As I mentioned in that last part. If we don't get men to come out in numbers to speak out, well, what happening? Me and Shervon and Mr. Fields alone, 3 men, 4 men alone, we need numbers to come out and let me voice our and let people hear our voice our opinions to make this change. We can't sit down in the background and we only want to WhatsApp, and when we need to go out as Mr. Shervon always advocated. Go out there, let our voice be heard, writing letters, change the narrative, all these different things. And that's what we need. We don't want men to say, but you know, that a woman and that how them get on and we leave it as that. No, because at the end of the day, I tell somebody, what we do here can affect our sons in the future and whatnot. We're not fighting for us only here, you know, we're fighting for the future. We have your sons, grandsons, nephews coming up. You don't want to see some girl or some woman abusing a nephew or a grandson or the case of it. So what we do now could help them later on in the future. So we need people to come out. When we call meetings and they don't come out and they speak about and speak out. Let our voices be heard.
Another thing too, you know, there are some men who believe that the woman would change. You know, they have this belief that I'll give you some time and you know she might change. But I think
I can't tell
that
you.
is setting the stage for an explosive finish, like you guys said.
Yeah, David, I can't tell you the amount of times that we get called from guys who even go as far as to say, but we went by the police station and the police not studying, man, the police ignoring my report. And then when we engage the police and the police begin to investigate, quarter way through the process, halfway through the process, the police reach back out to us and say the guy say he's no longer interested.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we reach out, they say, well, boy, you know, we talk and she say, and so people believe that this conversation only happens on the other way around, you know.
Yeah.
Right? But these happen here too, David, as you're saying.
Yeah, and I know too that there are some police officers who are really interested or try their best to assist in domestic violence, and
Correct.
then you know when they see what's happening, they back off.
Mm-hmm.
They back off.
Marlon, you hear me screaming yesterday, right? You hear me screaming yesterday when I say yesterday, I say I don't know what to say again. Right?
Yeah.
Right? You hear me screaming yesterday because we experience this a lot. I think more times than not. Most
Yeah,
of
because I have
the
one guy who was going through, he had his daughters, he had his children. And so I said, take the woman to court for maintenance. He hesitated. I said, well, but if it was the other way, we should take it for maintenance. Well, he actually take the advice. And he just get money and he get assistance from the court and he maintain and different thing. So it could go vice versa. Maintenance will go both ways. You understand?
most of the domestic violence cases I have been involved in with you all, where the men are victims, most of the times the men discontinue the process.
Yeah.
Most of that's your experience too, right, Marlon?
Yeah.
Now, David, you are outside, onlooker on the outside. What does that say to you, David? On the outside, tell me.
Sometimes I am very upset with that because I mean I too have my experiences personally, you know, and I too could say that I probably created part of the problem too by hoping that things would have changed. You know, and then down the road I realized this ain't changing at all. Let me get rid of this problem once and for all. You know, but I know a lot of people, guys in particular, who sometimes, because they think it will impact on the children, they think it will impact on the good. Some guys come from some real good family backgrounds and don't want the family to know that he is going through that. So he's trying to get any kind of cover that will cover down that and keep it simmering down there and praying that it stop and hoping that she changes and all this kind of thing, you know. I know a lot of instances like that blew up in their faces. Some of these guys, that is the point now where some, they talk about quiet men. There are some guys who will explode so much so that it might end up murder. It might end up in instances where he has lost it, completely lost it. He end up in jail. He might commit suicide. We hear about all these things, and I think it's something like you said, from in front, instead of coming to defend your cause, from in front, let people know, listen, or come. When I say people, you're not going in the public and wash your linens. But what I'm saying, there's the Fathers Association. You can probably call some sort of audience with them and say, listen, I'm going through this, and I think it will end up so and so. How can I work on this? Even with a single mothers association, if that is happening, vice versa, like Marlon expresses, yes. Talk it out before it reaches to the court, because when it reaches the court part, that's a different battle. That's a different battle where all the odds are against you now. You have to have all the S's in your close to your chest now, and most of the time you don't have all the S's. You might have a in your hand, and you're hoping this jack will work for you. But if they hold it all the S's, partner, problems. I have another call. Let's see if you can squeeze in this one. Good afternoon. Hello? Yes, good afternoon. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yeah.
I just want to make a point on what Serene and the name was saying, right?
Yes, Cyril.
The point she mentioned about the man saying not karma, right? With the woman, right?
Go ahead, caller.
Saying sometimes we have to be careful in terms of, and I take this thing serious, and it's kind of touched me, because, first I must say, I'm not promoting no violence on the other gender side, right? But probably we need to, instead of just look at what the man said, but karma, why he said it. Because sometimes when you're not getting your way, for instance, justice is swinging one way all the time. Society have it like that. And if you see something happen now where it swings the other way, you may rejoice. Not that you very really want that to happen, no, but you will rejoice. So sometimes we have to be careful and do this bash somebody and say they're sick because they say that, right? Because they know what they've been going through all the time and other people, and they're not seeing that justice. So you just swing and see what that person was always getting their way. So that's why probably I'm just saying, probably that's why the person might use it, it's karma now, because it's something happened to that person now then. So we have to be careful sometimes. They just judge somebody by what they might make a statement. And that's why we need more open forums like this, or even, I don't know if we have it here, when I watch pictures, sometimes you see they have these, you go to these groups and that you could speak, see things going on with you, both male and female. And it's like a organization, you go there for probably a 6 months or wherever you're going through this kind of therapy. I don't know if we have these things here. I know I just sitting here and I know I'm listening to these discussions all the time, every day, and it's the same thing as the woman said, So how can we bridge that gap? We need to try differently. I think we're sticking too much with the same things, probably why. And if we are doing things, Shervon said it just now, of course, to say we have it then. So like we are gender-based units and things, just to say we have it, But it mustn't just be to say we have it. There must be a continuous thing. We must do the research, realize this work, cut it out, that kind of stuff. And something I promote, I deal with a lot of youths, right? You see that earlier, always said it. You see that lashing of the female, it's in male, and we didn't see it as a problem. And when we ask the male, hey, you don't take girls, I just cut out that immediately. And pulling the girls and also explaining, girls is also not supposed to hit boys. We're not supposed to have no lashing. That is lead on the road of violence. I just stop it one time. And when they do it, sometimes we laugh. That's another thing. That's not a joke. And when it escalates now, is then we no want to deal with it. So again, we have to want to do it. You see that want to do? That is one of the things we missing. I see that drive? We could stay and talk from now until. This is my perspective, right? But if we don't have the willpower to want to do it, brothers, because every day you will see it. 4 and 5 men when you have a group chat with men and things, and they're not coming out, but as something happens to them, you hear them come after. We have to warn to it, not for today, not for tomorrow, and for our children. And the narrative of using not male for the boys or for the girls, you have to stop that. That is one thing I see happening. Yeah. And it's a pet peeve of mine. I went with a guy from St. Lucia, a partner of mine. He came here from quite St. Lucia to do a program here with some schools and other organization here. And you know what it was? It was from UNICEF. And they were promoting violence against girls and women. And I was like, how come? I see the thing when I read the thing. So I asked him, brother man, I just get a job. So understand what we're doing. When you go to the schools, you're going to schools with boys and girls. When I as a boy sit down in that class and they have the role play and all, and I in that class, but here it's labeled violence against girls and women. How am I feeling? And I'm being abused in that same school or probably that same class. How am I to feel?
You know, very important point, Colin. Sorry, we have to.
That is my contribution.
We out of time.
So long as it have these things, I will continue to contribute. Just my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Colin. Sorry, out of time, we had to cut here, but that's a good point. And I think David and Marlon, we have to continue this convo next weekend.
Let's I see Cyril is looking to respond. Cyril. Hello? Cyril, are you there?
Yeah, like she got cut
Cyril,
off.
are you there? Hello?
Yes.
Quickly.
Yes, let me just clear something up because the gentleman who just called and talk about too quick to judge. This is not a judgment I passing on the man. I was the facilitator in that workshop. And this man strongly believes because of his culture. I didn't want to go down the road, right? But let me say, because that is how it came across. He is a Hindu and he believes in karma, that when people do certain things, it is what they did in the past life. It's not that I was judging the man, right? It's not that I am not saying that the man what experiences he had.
Cyril, I don't think he was pointing finger at you. I think he was generalizing. Yeah.
Yes, I agree, Cyril. I think you are generalizing across society.
Yes. Cyril, I know you very well.
Yeah, that sometimes persons may have an impression.
Thank you, Cyril.
Yes, thanks, Cyril.
Cyril is one of the most powerful commentators we can have on radio. Trust me.
Yeah. Thank you very much for engaging with us today, Cyril. But gentlemen, I think we need to continue this conversation next week, right? I don't think we scratch the surface of it. Marlon, we didn't touch on false allegations, domestic violence.
So much we can still touch on.
And I have things there too to speak to that. So definitely we need to continue this next week. Marlon, any quick words before we go?
I say, the Single Father Association, we don't encourage violence. Try to live in love and unity, peace, and try to talk it out before they fight it out. Basically,
I mean, Trinidad and Tobago, you all heard some of the layers of this very complex issue that is domestic violence, right? And I think Cyril made a very good point in saying we've been investing over the years and we're not seeing any result.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And what we are seeing at the association, it's time for us to look at it differently. Right? Marlon made some valid points about looking at the data from the perspective of all the points of domestic violence, right? Not just physical violence, which is easy to see, right? We are saying the men, you are victims too. You can be victims as well. And you need to recognize when you are. The resources we post online, please go and read it and learn and understand some of the dynamics of this. But we will continue this next week, God's willing, same time Friday at 4:15 p.m. Power 102, thank you all very much for the space. David, ever graceful host, we thank you very much for being with us every Friday.
Thank you so much too, and we look forward to it. Thank you, Marlon. Fantastic program. We've been listening to Hard Talk with the Fathers Association with the topic peeling back the layers of domestic violence and its impact on men. And Annette McGuire is saying, I will be checking in on my notification board to pick up the slack.
Yes,
So I
I'm
want to thank you,
looking forward to
gentlemen. It's been a fantastic show, and I think we should have a part 2 next week for sure. I want to thank the people who contributed via calls and messages.
Have a good evening, all. Take care.
All right.
And enjoy your weekend. Guys, be safe.
You too, David.
Same to you, man. Same to you, everybody.
Okay, that's it for today's edition of Hard Talk with the Fathers Association. Join us next Friday for another edition of the Fathers